It says we live. Are we live? It says we live. Hello, 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 world. What a wonderful feeling to listen to some Sociable Healing Live special with your host, Teresa B, along with our special guest, straight out of South Carolina, licensed counselor, Dr. Keisha Keith. What's
Hello, hello.
going on, Dr. Keisha Keith? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, because
Good.
God is good.
Absolutely. All the time. All the time. Yes.
And all the time.
God is good. Yes.
And I feel even better
Mhm.
because you are here to provide to the world what it is that you do, who you
Mhm.
are. And so it's time that I hand you the mic so you can tell us who
Mhm.
is Dr. Keisha Keith.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Dr. Keisha Keith. I am a licensed professional counselor and a licensed clinical mental health counselor in both North and South Carolina. I provide individual and couples counseling. I work with women who have dealt with postpartum and are currently dealing with postpartum depression because I myself have experienced postpartum. I am a wife as of July. Well, in July, we will be celebrating 21 years of marriage, and we have two children. And so life is pretty busy, but I try to find balance, and I talk to clients about that every day. So for me, I don't talk about something that I don't live because it is a balancing act on a day-to-day basis. And so I am excited to be here, and I look forward to sharing with you all.
And I'm excited that you're here too. I'm very, very thankful for your time, Dr. Keisha Keith. You know, I like to say Dr. Keisha Keith. Yeah, some type of ring to it, I like to say it. Knowledge is power.
Mhm.
So fill me up and the rest of the world by sharing with us what is it, first of all, how long you been in as a licensed counselor, and what was your inspiration behind becoming a licensed counselor?
Okay. So I've been a counselor for about 16, 17 years now. Um, and really, I was not necessarily going to become a counselor when I started out because my goals and ambitions were to become an attorney, a corporate attorney, actually. And so with that, I went to undergrad, majored in criminal justice, and I plan to, apply to law school and do all that. However, while I was in undergrad, I was sitting in some social work classes and listening to everything that was happening in the world and happening with my professors, various clients, and things like that. And it struck me, and I was like, okay, this is speaking to me really more than going to law school. Um, there's an impact that I still can make. There are people out there who absolutely are in need of people who are going to be compassionate and understanding. And I've seen, or I had seen at that time, a lot of things that weren't showing and demonstrating compassion. And so I decided, okay, yeah, counseling is going to be that route. That's where I'm going. But on that journey for a little while, for several years, I was a probation officer as well. So that allowed me to also further see that counseling was where I needed to be because I saw so many situations that really were there were some mental health things going on that was impacting behavior, and it was important that rehabilitation, that discussion of, what has created this system, that is being lived out in individual lives that I was being, coming in contact with. And so I had to say, yeah, this is it. I really knew at that point, this is where I need to go. This is the direction. So went to grad school and majored in counseling psychology, and kind of the rest is really history for sure.
Oh, wow. That's um, not as common, I believe, as a culture that we see a lot of. And it's an amazing thing, very,
Mhm.
very amazing. And one of the other things that we don't see that we love that you're here is because the million dollar question is, what is mental health? And why
Okay.
do we even care?
Yeah. So, so mental health is your emotional, your psychological, and your social well-being. And it affects everything. It affects how we think, how we feel, how we act. And it helps us to pretty much determine how to handle stressful situations, how we deal with other people in our lives, and the choices that we make. It encompasses everything. This space in between our ears is the wheelhouse to everything. It will depict and determine how we will progress in life or not, because there are various thought processes, there are various patterns that we live, and in those it creates so much angst for some people that it prevents them from seeing beyond what is just right in front of them. And so it's everything. It encompasses our whole body. And it's that, so that mind body connection is absolutely essential. It is a part of us. It is what we do on a day-to-day basis. You know, the Bible talks about as a man thinketh, so is he. That's the truth.
Mm, amen to that.
Yeah.
When we talk about mental health, there are a lot of misconceptions,
Mhm.
particularly even in the Black communities,
Yeah.
on what mental health really is. And what are some of those common misconceptions that you've experienced about mental health, and how did they come into existence?
Okay. So some myths that exist are that mental health problems are not common. Um, you know, if people with mental health issues, that they're crazy. Um, you know, having a mental health issue or saying you have a mental health issue is a sign of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And only, you know, and even in the realm of therapy, only people who, you know, don't have friends, or they're lonely, or whatever, will they need a therapist. Those are the only people that ever need a therapist. um Another myth is that mental health problems are permanent. And while there are some debilitating mental health issues, everything is not permanent. With the appropriate, effective coping skills, and sometimes I'm not, I don't push medication, but sometimes it's necessary because there's an imbalance there that needs to just be put under control. And once you have that, and in addition to using your coping, then you can potentially not use that medication again. But it involves being consistent. You have to be consistent with everything that you are doing. And so we're looking at a space right now where mental health is at the forefront. Um, and I think that this pandemic has really brought it, that, you know, to the forefront, because people have had so much time just to be to themselves, or, you know, only have family members who live in the house. And it has created a lot of anxiety. It has created a lot of feelings of symptoms of depression. And so with that, we're seeing now where that myth of, you know, mental health illnesses are for weak people. You know, you're weak, you can't handle it. You know, you just let every little thing move you. But we're seeing celebrities who are coming out to
Mm-hmm.
say, listen, I've battled with depression, I've battled with anxiety, I've battled with so many things. And, you know, even for me, I've dealt with depression and anxiety um, as a result of postpartum. So it can happen to anyone. And it's not a weakness. I think that there's so much strength in being able to say, this is what's happening to me. But you have to be able to say that in a space that is supportive, because not everyone is able to handle that, because there is still that stigma. There is that, you know, within the African American community specifically, there's we're going to pray about it,
Mm,
and we're going to, we're going to leave it in God's hands. And I don't doubt, what God can do. I know also there are resources that have been put on this earth to assist you in doing that, in making the changes that you want to see. But sometimes because of that thinking, it is okay. I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to sit over here. And if nothing changes, then I start to doubt God. I start to doubt myself. I start to doubt how really, weak I really am. And I see myself in a light that is not pleasing, that is not true. So it's important that we start to make those changes and start to say, listen, this really can happen. Whether or not you feel like life is really out of control and it's impacting certain areas of your life, does not mean that you're not dealing with stress, does not mean that you
mhm,
don't need to just kind of assess some things and see, okay, what changes do I really need to make in my life? And I think that with this pandemic, a lot of us have seen there are a lot of changes that we need to make in our lives. There are things that we don't need.
oh,
There are, and in some sense, there are some people that we don't need. And because it will allow us to have a more peaceful life in the process. So we have to really look at what is true and what is not. We have to do our own research about certain things, because just because somebody said it does not make it fact.
mm,
You just have to know, okay, this might not be right for them, but this is right for me. And make that decision, and be firm in your choice, because there are going to be people who are going to question it. But you have to know that be persuaded in your own mind that this is what I need to do.
mm.
Yeah.
What is your understanding of the differences in African Americans when it
Mhm.
comes to the health, the outcome of the health,
Yeah.
particularly mental health, of course?
Yeah. Um, there are disproportionate numbers of, let's say, children, African American children, um, who have been diagnosed with ADHD, or oppositional defiant disorder as well, just because of their inability to sometimes sit down, stay focused, and follow pretty much rote learning
Mhm,
in certain
mhm,
areas. And with that, is this really ADHD or oppositional defiant disorder, or is this that child's learning style is different? Therefore, whatever you are doing right now is not reaching that child. And in a lot of cases, that is the case. We're in a situation where you have to understand how child will learn, what best suits them. And it can't be cookie cutter,
mm,
because a lot of times there's not that, that time that teachers have necessarily to sit with each child individually and reach them in that way. So we have to identify those issues, even before we get to mental health, the physical health. um I can give you an example of something, just my own personal experience. So yesterday I went to the doctor, and my doctor and I, we sat there, we talked about some things. She told me what I needed to do. And I said, well, I don't think I'm going to take that medicine. I said, because I feel like I can do what is necessary to be able to turn this thing around. She looked at me and she said, you know what? You're right. and I believe that you can. And that was her seeing me. That was her hearing me.
Mm,
A lot of times in our community, that's not happening. But
mm,
because I can tell you that some years ago, I had a totally different physician. And not that this is everybody's experience, but it happens. And so I was telling him some of the same things that I was telling my current doctor. He said, okay. And then he took his script pad out and started writing me this prescription. Okay, I just told you I'm not taking this medicine. But okay, you're giving me this script, fine. Um, but he didn't see me. He didn't
mm,
connect with me. And that creates that distrust, that
mm,
mistrust
mm.
that takes place in the community because you're not listened to. You are told what you need to do, as opposed to how can I assist you in making this better. And when it comes to on the mental health side as well, there has to be a rapport. You have to establish that connection because I tell people quite often, if I'm not that person, I'm okay with that. I need you to get to the person that you connect with who will help you go into action because the action part is where the change happens. And so but it's a journey together. It is me walking side by side with the client along their journey based on what their experiences are and what they need at that moment. It's not me just saying, well, look, this is what the book told me. And so this is what I'm going to tell you. And this is what I'm going to write for you. No, it cannot happen that way. And so a lot of us in the African American community are really disenfranchised in that way because of a lack of connection, a lack of rapport, a lack of being seen, a lack of being heard in all of those spaces.
You touched a lot, a lot. 2011, I believe. I was in Fort Drum, New York. I think I just came back from Afghanistan, or maybe 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And I took my daughter in to the doctor. And I cannot particularly remember what it was. However, I do remember I met her for the first time. My daughter was in the room. So
Mm-hmm.
at this time, maybe she was about 8 years old, 7. And she just looked at her, didn't check her, take a post, nothing, sat down, wrote on a paper, oh, your daughter has ADHD. Now, again, I just came back from Afghanistan too. I'm
Right.
tired. I'm
Yeah.
all of this that's going on. And I just saw you walk in and write on here. Immediately, I asked her, or how do you know that you haven't even checked her
Mm-hmm.
or anything? And how can you determine a child who doesn't move as often as how you all stigmatize it? What's hyper in her? She wrote the prescription, said, would you want it? And I went off in uniform and all, grabbed my daughter, walked out the door, and I felt like, hmm, if this happened to me, I wonder if this ever happened to anyone else. And if it did, what did they do? How did they feel?
Mm-hmm.
Did they accept it?
Yeah.
And I know that's very common, that happens. So when you mention ADHD and how that occurs, it's that common misconception or the stigma that they put on us and our families and our children.
Mm-hmm.
How can we be a better advocate for our children to detect when that is happening? How do we approach that for those that are having challenges trying to figure out what I can do for my child?
Mm-hmm. A lot of things. One part of it is educating yourself.
Mm,
Um, you can go online and you can look at the various symptoms. So educate yourself. Know what it is that these diagnoses entail. Now, it may not go as in depth, or you may not understand all of it, but at least you have some idea. The other part is to talk with the teachers. Um, you know, sometimes I know work gets hectic and schedules get hectic, but it is important to let your face be seen in that school setting. And I know that right now that's probably difficult because of this pandemic, but contact the teachers, email, check in, see what's happening. Take a look at the work that's coming in. When you're sitting with your child, how are they, behaving for you? Write some of that stuff down so that you have, okay, this is what's happening in this setting, and this is what's happening in this setting. So what is creating, some of the behaviors that we might have. Assistant principals, school counselors, advocate with them, talk with them. If you don't get the response you would like, look at, okay, what other resources do we have in the community that might help me? Do I just need to also consider, okay, if I take them to talk to an outside counselor just so that I can see how they perceive everything that's going on, so then I can have, some substantiation on, okay, no, maybe this is not that particular situation going on with your child, or yes, maybe it is, but you have taken kind of those steps to be able to see, okay, what is it that we're really dealing with here, before being able to just say, okay, you gave them a label. So now here we are operating in this label, and that label might be unfounded. Now, sometimes it's not unfounded, but even in that, it allows you to be able to identify, okay, our next steps forward are these, because I want my child to progress. I want my child to be successful, and I'm not going to allow this to deter them from achieving.
There were many, many benefits for me growing up in Chicago. Although most people probably know there have been challenges too. But one of the things was one of my siblings, I remember he was diagnosed with ADHD, and I remember some of the side effects he had under medication. And
Mm-hmm.
that really triggered me when that doctor mentioned my child had it, because I witnessed the change in my brother, and it wasn't a positive change. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't strengthening his brain. It
Yeah.
was it seemed like it was worsening it to where now they want to say he have a behavior problem
Mm-hmm.
after that,
Mm-hmm.
instead of looking at these sound effects that you have on there, and this could contribute to that. So an immediate flashback occurred when she told me, and it was difficult, of course. I knew I wasn't going to do it, but what I did do, it took some time going back and forth. Like you mentioned, the teachers and the getting her tested. And they wanted to try to put her on this 504 and all these other plans that wasn't going to happen as far as what they wanted for her to do. And that was probably the time I had the biggest challenge in the
Mm-hmm.
military, was during that period. I'm
Yeah.
already trying to reintegrate back into from Afghanistan to, I can't even say America, since almost every state's so different. So I'll just say New York, because that's where I was at. And all of this was occurring. It was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found interesting was when I made that decision to finally get out, oh, thank God. Um, a student, A B student, till this day, A B student the entire time. And what it was, it really wasn't a lot of adjustments. A lot of it was with me, where I had stopped working. Now, of course, I was fortunate enough because of what I've sacrificed my life. So I received my entitlements for sacrificing my life. So
Right.
I was fortunate enough to have that. So I also had a choice on, do I want to be a mother now or my
Mm-hmm.
own child and be that advocate, because I know what's best for her. And
Mm-hmm.
ever since then, it changed a lot. But I can't stop thinking about all the other parents that
Mhm.
are struggling with that. Because if this is all society is showing us, how do we help our children? What else is it that we need to do? And as you mentioned, it's important to know the signs and the
Mhm.
symptoms of ADHD or anything as far as particularly even mental health. And
Mhm.
speaking of the signs and symptoms, what are some of those signs and symptoms that we can see or we need to start being aware of in our loved ones so we'll
Mhm.
know when we see it before it may possibly be too late?
Okay. So when it comes to like younger children, uh, some signs and symptoms that we may look for are like changes in their school performance.
Mm,
So if that child was once, they were able to sit there, they were a B student, maybe sometimes a C, but they were, it was pretty even, no problems. But there starts to be a change. Like they might be having, maybe there's some angry outbursts, maybe there's some really, really significant lack of focus. And I'm not talking, you know, keeping their attention maybe 20, 30 minutes, because depending on the age, that's normal. But I'm talking about you can't keep their attention for 5 minutes when you used to be able to have that 20 to 30. Changes in their sleep habits, changes in their eating habits, when they're worrying a lot, or refusing to go to bed or go to school. When you see some hyperactivity, like they're moving and as if there's a motor running them, really.
mhm,
In that instance, they've told you they're having nightmares or they're waking up in the middle of the night. Some bedwetting, maybe, depending on varying ages, and even some adolescents can experience bedwetting when there's significant issues and things going on with them that is changed, something's changed in the environment. And some temper tantrums. Now, we're not talking about your 2-year-old on the floor, kicking and screaming, because we know that's what your 2-year-old is going to do. But potentially your older child who has not displayed these behaviors before is now really throwing fits. um, then it's important to definitely take a closer look at that. When it comes to a little older child, pre-adolescent child, um, if they've started to potentially, for some, uh, use substances, um,
mm,
if they have the lack of ability to cope with the problems that they're having in their daily lives. If they usually fall out with their friend, but then the next day or 2 days later they're cool again, then and now it's like, no, they're done, they're isolating from them and that kind of thing. Now, there may have been something that happened that just let them know, yeah, this is not a good friend for me anymore. But if nothing that they can pinpoint has happened, they just kind of feel like, okay, no, I'm just out of it, and they're starting to do, that kind of tap out of everything. um they don't have the interest in sports or whatever used to be their thing. There's that lack of interest there now. Then it's important to take a deeper look at that. If they're complaining a lot about physical issues, um like for some it may be their tummy's always upset, or they're feeling like there's some aches or some pains. Investigate that a little further, because sometimes that tummy ache can be some anxiety, and they don't really know how to
mm,
say, I feel anxious, or
mm.
I'm worried about this thing, but it is showing up. uh they can't manage their responsibilities at home, chores and things like that, doing their homework and keeping track of stuff where they used to be able to do that. It's important to take a deeper dive and see exactly what's going on there. If they're usually a happy-go-lucky child, and their mood is just, it's done that 180, and you're like, whose child is this? um, some of that, given, if they're hitting that preteen age, some of that could be normal, but some of that might not necessarily. There may be something that has impacted their environment. When it comes to adults, looking at, okay, if you've noticed there's some confused thinking that they maybe your family member may be having, they're sad, or irritable for longer periods of time than they normally are if something happened. They're feeling really extremely high, like happy on cloud nine, or extremely low, like they're in the valley. They don't know which way is up. It's just it's all bad. Then be aware of that. If there's some significant times where they are just excessively fearful or worrying or anxious, they're withdrawing from people where they used to be a little more social. Changes in their eating and sleeping habits as well. And if there are significant, strong feelings of anger, and frustration, sometimes if they say to you that they're seeing something or they're hearing something, now some may be experiencing something that is more spiritual, but dig deeper, because is this a hallucination? Is this them having some delusion? Just take note so that you can know, okay, something's not right, and then maybe approach them and say, how's it been going? Uh, you know, I I'm noticing that, you've been a little angry lately, or you've been withdrawing a little bit. Um, I'm here to listen if you're ready to talk, or whenever you're ready to talk. But I just want you to know that I'm concerned and I care about you. And sometimes, being able to say what you notice lets them know that they have been important enough for you to hone in on them and know, okay, they care, or they want to listen to what's going on. If they so choose to give you that information, carry it with some gentle gloves, because they've allowed you to be in a, get that information, and they've allowed you to be their safe space. So keep that safe space.
Mm.
Unless there's a situation where they're a danger to themselves or others, then help them walk through some things. Maybe suggest if there's significant enough issues, them going to talk to someone. But just just be that support, that non-judgmental, whether you agree or believe in mental health illnesses, or whether you agree or believe in counseling, or seeing a therapist, notwithstanding, but do what is right, do what is necessary to allow this person not to feel like they've just been fractured because they gave you this information that they trusted you to have, and then you ignored and didn't do anything.
Mm. What should you do if they don't want to open up to you and you still see that their repeated behavior has worsened? What situation do you have at that point? Do you have just that I call 911, or what will be that next step if they don't? Because again, if we're even talking about Black culture,
Mhm.
great technique to use. I try to practice that as often as I can when I recognize things,
Mhm.
but we don't do that often.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't. Even
Mhm.
to each other, we do not
Mhm.
embrace one another when we're going through things.
Right.
Instead, we use that and try to weaponize
Mhm.
us often. I won't say all the time, but often. That's what occurs. And that's why we have that fear of sharing what we have going on with us. So,
Yeah.
what do you do when you use that technique by sharing your concerns or expressing your concerns and asking how they're doing, but they don't want to give back to you?
Okay. And if they don't want to give back to you, that's okay. Um, it goes back to what I said about whenever you're ready, or if there is someone else that you trust. I encourage you to absolutely have these conversations and talk about what's going on. Um, because for some, it's not a situation that's going to be a life or death situation for them. It is that they are potentially just experiencing, there's been something that may have changed in the environment, a situation that may have occurred. Like you mentioned, coming home from deployment, that's a whole different ball game. You're going from one environment where you have to be on guard and alert and all of these things, to another environment that is, a little more slow pace, but you are trying to transition and adjust into that. It's no different with us in regular everyday life. There's
Mhm.
so many things that come at us, and so they can really knock us down. But it's important sometimes, we can determine and look at our life and say, okay, this is what's going on, this is what I need to change. But find that person if you cannot identify that for yourself. If you just need to say, sometimes, honest to goodness, people come in my office and say, I just need to talk to somebody. I just need to tell somebody that I don't know.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, go ahead and talk. And so, but I give them that space to do that, and they make that choice. If you're talking to a family member or a friend and they don't want to tell you, they're not ready. And so then you just let them know that you're here. Just support them. Now, they're being a danger to themselves or others, that's going to be a different conversation. Because in some ways, they're going to have to either get to the nearest emergency room, call crisis hotline, or in some cases, if there's a mental health team in your area, having them just kind of come to check on them, and just letting them know that this is not you trying to put their business out there, you trying to throw them away. This is you being concerned. And they may be
Mhm.
mad. Understand that. They're gonna cuss you
Oh,
out. They're gonna
be
call
prepared,
you,
huh?
right. They're gonna call you all kinds of things, especially if they are not acknowledging that they need this support. And look at it as that. Explain it to them that way. This is support. This is just me supporting you. Because right now you may not be able to carry it yourself. I'm helping you. I'm helping you journey. And in this journey, it's not going to feel good, but we're moving. I need for you to do this because you need to be healthy. You need to figure out what's going on.
Women and men. I I know there's some specific differences when it comes to some of the challenges
Mhm.
from Black women and Black men
Mhm.
when faced with mental health.
Yeah.
What are some of those differences that we may have as women, or how the Black men, what are those coping mechanisms? What are those signs that maybe that Pacific thing that, and also is sometimes even a stereotype depending on what it is, but what are those main key differences when we talk about mental health and women and men, uh, particularly even when we're even looked at it as in relationships? Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that?
Okay. So it varies because sometimes they cross over.
Yeah.
Um and and what you would think, okay, women would respond in this way or men might respond in this way, could be totally opposite. So it's kind of that we may stereotype some things, but there are various situations that can create and impact us in a particular way. I'll take depression when it comes to women. Women have a larger percentage of depression as a result of a couple of things, and two in particular are discussing situations that are creating some of that sense of low sense of self, some of that frustration, some of that angst, or some of the things that create that. Okay, I'm not dealing with anybody. I am, I'm isolating myself. I'm not answering my phone. I'm not doing X, Y, and Z. The more that we talk about a thing, the more that it lingers, and so creates that space where you're not able to really allow those symptoms to kind of decrease because you are constantly engaging. So that could be if there's a relationship that has ended and you talk about it for months at a time and months at a time, you are fueling it. And what you feed will grow. And
Mm,
because of that, you are allowing it to grow and fester in you. And even though you are trying some things to cope with it, it's not effective because you still go back. You still go back and revisit. You still go back and start talking about how you were hurt or how you were done wrong. So having a support system is a wonderful thing. But at points you have to give yourself a limit of how often you are going to stay in this cycle of talking about the situation.
mm.
It's time to kind of pivot and allow yourself to make some changes in that area. Um,
Why does it sometimes linger for women? Would you say it has a lot to do with closure, not getting those questions that she's seeking? Like, what would be that issue? Why that lingers a lot? Because I do believe that that is a more common symptom or reaction that we get as a culture. Why would that be?
so so it lingers in some ways because we continue to talk about it. But it is a part of closure as well because if you don't get certain answers, then it's easy to feel like, okay, I've been really jaded, or somebody ghosted me, and they're not answering texts, they're not answering phone calls,
Mm,
emails, smoke signals, any of that. And so it's like we have to identify, okay, and a sense of acceptance
mm,
because we're looking at if it's a loss of a relationship or something like that, there it's still similar to grief. So
mm,
you still go through some of those same stages and phases, and being able to have the acceptance, have the this is what this is, and I acknowledge that. Being able to say, okay, what can I pull from this? What can I learn from this? Then it works better. You're able to move forward because you have a lessons learned list and you have a what I won't accept list
mm,
after that, after you've been able to get to that acceptance. But when you're not able to do that, absolutely your emotions are all over the place because there is a there are ruminating thoughts that just go in your head. They reel,
mm,
they reel, they reel. That it's because of this, or it ended because of that, or because this happened, or because I didn't do X, Y, and Z. But you don't know that for sure because you're not able to hear what the other person
mm,
has to say. And in some instances, if they were to tell you, you still might not feel like, okay, that's the closure I needed. It may lead to more questions.
mm,
So it is important that even if someone doesn't give you closure, that you identify what closure is for yourself.
mm. That's a good one. That's a very good one. What would be one of those most common challenges you've seen in your professional experience, of course, when it comes to Black men and what they're faced with mental health?
Okay. So in mental health, when it comes to Black men, there are so many external factors. Um, there's there's that heaviness and that weight of I'm carrying the family. Um, there's that heaviness of I'm just trying to be a Black man in this world, trying to make a living, trying to get an education, trying to do these things. And there are people who think less of me. There are people who automatically think that I'm doing the wrong thing. So that plays psychologically, even if none of those things have directly happened to them, it's indirect. So then
Mm,
there's that sense
mm,
of sort of secondary trauma that
yeah.
happens. And so they're trying to deal with all of that and then continue to move. Not that that doesn't impact Black women, any differently at times, but it is a burden for a good number of African American males. And honestly, lately, practice has been filling up with African American males
Mm,
because they want to be able to be heard. They want to be able to figure out, how do I walk and not be angry? And it not necessarily be anger, my anger personally, but my anger for my brother, my anger for my fellow man, my anger for this situation that's happening. How do I find the way to really move in
mm.
this environment and in this atmosphere? How do I really say what I need to say? Because sometimes I'm not going to say it to the people I love and care about. Because sometimes there is that wall, that protective armor that gets built, because nope, I have to hold all of this in, because it goes back to the myths and the stigma. It's weakness to say that, I need help or I can't do something. So it's being able to have those spaces, and sometimes perfect strangers are the perfect people to be able to listen to what's
Oh, yeah.
going on. Yeah.
I know we talked about this on a previous episode on Social Healing Podcast. Black culture. How can we get better as a community on
Mhm.
speaking on mental health, on being comfortable talking about what we're going through? What are some of those techniques, those self care techniques we could do to get better as a community and as individuals?
Mhm. We can come together and bring an awareness, bring in a continued awareness that mental health matters, that
Mm,
is important. We have to be able to tell our stories, because if we don't tell our stories, then it doesn't give other people that fuel that they need to tell their story. Because, it's always been the what happens in my house stays in my house.
mm,
And what happens in my house stays in my house has hurt so many people,
mm,
because they feel like they cannot go and say, I'm having some problems, or I feel frustrated, or I just want to punch somebody right now, or my mind is just has me feeling like I'm in a box right now. They won't have that ability to feel like, okay, this is a space, but we've got to create those spaces. So whether that is some type of community support groups, whether that is some type of community events where we allow, various people in the mental health field to come out and just share, because there has to be that too. It's that know, like, trust. They have to know you. They have to know that you care, because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so being able to bridge that, and help them to see, listen, it's okay. It's okay for you to talk. Some of these things are normal. I can't tell you how many people come in, and when I say, but that's a normal response, so much weight is lifted, and you can visibly see that they have just been like, whew, because people don't know what is normal and what is not, because we're not going about saying this is happening to me too. Now, we might talk about somebody trifling or having a trifling friend or
real
whatever
quick, real
real
quick.
quick,
Hmm.
but we won't talk about these mental health situations, this stress, this other stuff that is weighing us down on a day to day. And let's not talk about all the things that are happening in our country
Mm.
that weigh us and weigh on us on a daily basis. How we are able to really come and see each other, because we have to see that change is happening, but it takes us together. Together we can. We have
Mm.
to be able to look at the things. How do we improve some of the systems that are in place right now? Because all of them aren't all together, just we need to throw them away. We need to put some other things in there.
We need to
But
put a
that
whole
takes,
lot of other things in.
yeah, yeah. And we have to be able to say, okay, people, get up, let's talk, let's have conversations, let's let each other know that we are all here, that we've been in this thing is it's kind of knocked us a little bit, but it hadn't knocked us out. We can
Turn
keep
the
going.
phones off when you get together.
That part. Because if I'm doing this while you talking, I'm like, yeah, you right. Yeah. And at the end of the day, when we go back and I say, well, you remember so and so, so and so? What you talking about? What so and so? You didn't say that. I said that like 2 days ago. Because we are not engaged. We are not being present. We are just existing.
Mm,
And we have to change that. We have to change that. We
mm.
have to be present for each other so that we can show up for each other in the process.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of why when we were talking right before we went live, I was telling you, oh my goodness, when it comes to the technical piece,
Yeah.
I'm just so focused on the content that
Mhm.
uh, I don't want to do the technical piece. But because of that, because this is our first time on live through StreamYard, I'm not even sure if I was able to get it on there from Facebook and what's the other one? Well, the two Facebook pages. So I had
Mhm.
to forward
Yeah.
it to the pages from this channel.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, we've had some of these conversations in the past.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I didn't want to just be on there to send it, but because this is the first time, I knew that it was important that I send the information, but still try to be in it and do what I'm doing now, which I was going to bring up at the end because now that we're approaching the end and the Q&A we'll have to do on another live
Okay.
stream.
Yeah.
But that's another reason why I had brought it up because if I'm looking at the comments, I want to check all of this. I
Yeah.
need to make sure it's coming in. But this is why we go through this process, as you mentioned. Lessons
Absolutely.
that we learn. So it's very important, as you stated, because I love to be in the present, and it's difficult for me to want to even on Zoom, what they're going through. You have the video, then people want to chat. How can I listen to the teacher if I'm
Right.
chatting and reading the comments?
Yes.
And that's very disturbing for me because I want to be able to really get the message that I was here for. Why am I here if I'm just gonna play the game? So it's
Right.
it is so valuable. And what did you say? You said you have to, in order to get to know someone, they have to get, you have to show that you care
Mhm.
about them.
Yeah.
And that is what a lot of people are
Mhm.
missing. And sometimes discomfort when I recognize that, because it's easy to recognize when you don't care.
Right.
People know,
Yeah.
children know, whoever you know when you don't care. It's
Right.
one of the most painful things you can experience, but now you have to figure out how do I respond to that. Talking with you and a lot of others in a mental health team and my prescribed therapist, I know it's been helping me along the way with
Mhm.
those techniques as well. So bringing you in to talk about this is very, very valuable to the
Yeah.
community. And as you stated, with these different working groups and what we're trying to develop, it's
Yeah.
now happening. So
Yeah.
many things that we learned through COVID, now we're able to come together and get on and get, and once I get the stream yard together.
Yeah.
But the good news will be that I know it'll be time for people to still send their comments. And when they send it, we'll be able to ask those questions on the podcast and our next live as well. So I just truly, truly want to thank you for everything. I have been grateful, and I know people want to know what is next for you. What are the services? Who do you provide? If we can make sure we hear that again, because you mentioned who you are in the beginning, but I want to make sure that's the one of the last things in their head after they hear this video. Who you are, what you provide, what's next for you, how to connect with you. The floor is still yours.
Okay. Well, I first have to thank you for this opportunity to be on this platform because this is absolutely where it starts. The conversation. The conversations have to be had. And like I said in the beginning, I am Dr. Kisha Keith. I'm a licensed professional counselor and a licensed clinical mental health counselor. I provide individual and couples counseling. I'm licensed in North Carolina and South Carolina. I also host a women's retreat annually. And this year we are going to the Isle of Palm, South Carolina for 4 days and 3 nights. And so because that time it's called the Drop Your Bags Retreat. And that's absolutely what we do. We drop our bags because why? Because we wear so many on a day-to-day basis, and it's important to drop those and to release them. To know more about that, you can go to www the number 4 lifeinterrupted.com, and that information is there. You can send me a message and I will give you that information. You can reach me on social media, on all platforms. I am either Dr. Keisha or Dr. Keisha D. Keith, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And I do have a question. I guess they didn't want to put it on here, but thank you that we have a question.
Uh-huh.
Before I answer that, I want to confirm as well. You service in South Carolina. Do you
Yes.
have any virtual services? And if so, how to connect with you virtually if you're not in the state of South Carolina?
Okay, so virtually I'm available, and I also you can do the same thing that I just said. Go to the website www.number 4 lifeinterrupted.com, and you can connect with me there. Send me a message to let me know, because what I also do is I work with people who just really have interruptions in their life, and it's not a thing where I'm using my there is some clinical knowledge, but I'm not diagnosing. We are taking a life journey, and I'm assisting you in being able to make the changes that you want to make. So you can reach me there for sure.
Okay. And the question is, what type of medical insurance do you accept?
Okay, so that's Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, Magellan, United Healthcare, or Optum. And I also take some employment assistance programs. Self pay as well. If you have a health savings plan, I accept that as well.
Oh, nice. Never heard of that. That's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank
Yes.
you again. Drop your bags. I know you notice I rolled my eyes, but because of course I can't
You're coming.
attend.
You're coming next year. Don't even worry about
I
it. I will
know,
see you.
I know. But Housewives of Atlanta, I believe they attended where you going, and I saw,
Yeah.
and oh my goodness. And of course with COVID it's been almost a year since we've been locked down, and then
Yes.
you come with your event. But I will make sure I share it with others, because
Yes.
as long as everybody else get it, it'll make me feel better, because now I'm surrounded around a lot of more positive energy. So I know it's okay, but I'm going to also post it. So ladies, women, please make sure you check it out. This is time for a break. South Carolina exclusive, out on the beach, away, massage. Oh,
Yes.
been a minute. Oh my goodness. Okay, let me stay the course. But drop your bags.
Yes.
2021,
Yes.
June
June the 10th through the 13th.
June the 10th through the 13th. And to hear more teachings from Dr. Kisha Keith, you can check her out on social healing. Can you remember my own podcast, Social Healing Podcast? There are some previous episodes, and of course, she's coming back for more. We're gonna be live again, so we're gonna go ahead and keep doing this. We're gonna do this the right way. Also, I don't want to forget Operation She Got Courage Foundation. It's going in full effect. So learn more about it by clicking on the link in the description as well. The link for the social media podcast is in the description, along with Operation She Got Courage Foundation. So you can learn more about how to contribute by going there. Any volunteer, whatever you have, contact us, check it out. And I end with this: be at peace at your pace. And thank you again. Thank you so much for tuning in to Sociable Healing, the Amitza Media Podcast. Until next time.